I'm Idiotech, and these are my first impressions of Factorio. So what is the game? Well, it's essentially a game about building a giant factory with the purpose of building a rocket silo and launching a satellite into space. That's the end game. In the process, you will have to defend it against various aliens that will attack you constantly. Now, the game released in early access on Steam a couple of days ago, and it's been in development for about 4 years. The game has sold over 100,000 copies on its own website, which is quite impressive. It retails for $20 US. Now, this is likely to be a very long video. So for those of you who don't like long videos or just don't want to stick around for the conclusion, here's the conclusion now. This is a great game. If you like SimCity, if you like Anno, if you like games about production chains, you will love this title. It's got a hell of a lot to offer, and for its price, I think it's well worth it. So go pick up the game. For the rest of you, let's get into it. Okay, so here's the options menu. It's kind of horrible to look at, if I'm honest. Now, this is a prototype, and the devs do say that they're going to improve all of this as they move forward, and I hope they do because it's not very nice. Now, it is a 2D game, so you can't expect a huge amount here in terms of options, but it's not the easiest thing to look at. So we've got tons of different rebinds here. That's great. I mean, in terms of its actual options, it's fantastic. It just needs to be improved visually. We also have mods. So this is cool. You can install mods, and they will add proper mod support on Steam later down the road. We also have a map editor, which is really cool if you want to build your own maps. And in the play section, we have quite a number of options. We have multiplayer, so you can pick a desired multiplayer name, for example, Idiotech. Let's click OK, and then you can create a new game, connect to a game. So for example, IP address. Now they are going to do proper multiplayer matchmaking moving forward, so that's great. We have replay a game, load game, custom scenarios, new games, and campaigns. So the campaign is essentially a tutorial. It's okay. It's not the best way to tutorialize a game that's this complicated, if I'm honest, but it does serve its purpose somewhat. There are also a number of tips in the game that will help you learn the game. However, I did spend a lot of time on the wiki and a lot of time watching tutorial videos on YouTube because, honestly, I find that a much easier way to learn games this complicated, and trust me, it's a very complicated game. Okay, so let's load up my game. Actually, before we do that, I want to show you the new game options. There are a ton of options here for generation of maps, size, richness, frequency, but here's an important thing. Down here we have peaceful mode. Now, when I first played the game, I didn't have this turned on. I wanted to see the game for what it was, and I quickly learned that I was going to die horribly because I didn't know what I was doing and I was being constantly attacked by aliens. So I made a new game with this turned on, and I've just been focusing on the building mechanics. This is important. If you're playing the game for the first time, I would strongly encourage you to turn peaceful mode on, because otherwise you'll die very quickly before really learning how the game works. Okay, so let's load up my game. Game number 2, where I didn't die horribly. Okay, so when you first load up a game, it's very important that you check out these tips. Now, in most games, I tend to skip this stuff, but I would strongly urge you check out all of these tips because they are very, very helpful. Okay, so this is Factorio. This is what it looks like. It's a very basic visual style. It kind of reminds me of SimCity 4, actually. That sort of like pre-rendered 3D stuff that when you zoom in looks kind of horribly pixelated. I don't know why they went with this art style, but they did. It's not the nicest looking game in the world. However, this is clearly a game focused around gameplay and not its presentation and its visuals, and that's completely fine. It's a great game mechanically. Okay, so I play as this little guy. When you first start up the game, you'll run around with a pickaxe, chopping down trees and picking up coal, and eventually you'll start being able to build machines, and then you'll build massive factories. Now, this is quite a small factory, and it only does one thing right now, which is to produce science packs. Now, I need science packs for research projects so I can do more and more interesting things. Let me zoom in here. Okay, so these laboratories right here, they exist to research. Now, this is the research tree. It's massive. I'll go into it in a minute. But that right here is the sole purpose of this entire factory, is to produce red and green bottles. They're called science packs. They get fed into these labs, and the labs do research for me. Kind of insane that that's how much stuff it takes to get that done, but that's how much stuff it takes. Now, this is probably not the most optimal way of doing it, and there are a couple of extra features in here that I will explain. But this is kind of the first step, is to get research happening and to automate that research process so that you can learn more and more things and progress towards that rocket silo. Okay, so I'm going to run you through the mechanics and how each of these things work. So we have two areas over here. We have this blue area and this black area. Now, in order to fuel certain functions, you need coal. You burn the coal, it powers a furnace, for example. Over here, I'm mining ore, this blue material. Now, the game will auto-save, as you just saw there. So I'm mining ore. Now, you can see these little ore patches. I'm mining that, and that's getting transferred along this conveyor belt, as is the coal. So let's follow the coal. There's also splitters in this game, which is kind of nice because you can split the flow of various resources and aim them in various directions to feed different kinds of machines, which is lovely. We also have an electrical power grid over here. So this is a hydroelectric system that I'm using here, which is very helpful, and it reduces your reliance on coal. Okay, so if we follow the coal over here, you'll see it's being fed into this section. Now, basically what's happening here is a number of furnaces. I've lined up a number of furnaces, and it picks up coal and iron ore, which I'm also mining over here, and it feeds it into these furnaces and produces iron plates. Now, once it's finished producing those iron plates, it delivers them to two conveyor belts. It delivers them to this conveyor belt and to this conveyor belt. They both end up doing different things. For the purposes of this, though, I'll follow this one. So basically, it comes down here and gets fed into this assembly unit. So this is an assembly machine. This is a version 1. Now, version 1 allows you to input one item and export one item. So if the item you're creating requires more than one material, you can't use assembly machine 1 to do that. You'll need assembly machine 2, which can take 2 resources to create 1 resource. So I'm creating iron wheels, I think they're called, iron gear wheels. I'm feeding them into this assembly machine, along with copper, which is coming down here into this crate and then being transferred across here. And it's creating science packs. Now, the science pack 1 is the red bottle, and that then gets fed along here, picked up and put into these labs. So that's the first part of the process. Now, the second part of the process is up here. This is my copper section. So it's the same as the iron ore stuff. I'm mining copper over here. I'm sending it down here. It's getting processed into copper plates, as well as the ore is being used to power the furnaces, and that's being sent over here. Now, this is a more complicated section. I'm creating copper wire, which is then being used to create electronics, which are being stored here, which are then being sent over here to create inserters. These inserters require iron plates, gear wheels, and electrical circuits. Over here, I'm creating cogs again, and they're being fed into here to create track. That's then being fed onto this conveyor belt, which is then being picked up by these assembly machines and turned into science pack 2s, which are then being fed down this conveyor belt, which is much faster than the yellow ones, by the way. If you see the color difference here, the red ones are much faster than the yellow ones, and I'm doing that to speed up the delivery of these green ones because they're much further away. As you can see, they're being delivered now, and they get delivered along here and picked up by these inserters and put into these labs. That's basically my factory right now, and I've played this game for about 8 hours. Now, obviously I could have done more. I spent a lot of time actually learning how the game works. The game does have a full day-night cycle, by the way, and you will be attacked a lot during the night, at least from what I can tell. Okay, so that's how my current factory setup is looking. It's a hell of a lot when you consider I'm just producing 2 goods. So if you're the kind of person who really likes to micromanage stuff, this is the game for you. I do. I really enjoy the mechanics this game has on offer. Okay, so over here, let's talk about research now, because this is important. The end goal is to build this rocket silo and launch a satellite into space. That's the end goal. Once you've done that, you beat the game. There is a ton of stuff between you and doing that, as you can see. We can do solar energy, we can build laser turrets, we can build gates, we can build electric motors. So yeah, you can do all sorts. Currently, I'm working on automobilism, as you can see up here, and that's going to allow me to build cars. Now, I don't actually know what cars do. I've played this game for 8 hours, and I still have no idea what I'm actually going to get from making cars, but it seems kind of interesting. So, to make a car, I need 8 times engine units, and I need 20 times iron plate and 5 times steel. So, in order to research automobilism, by the way, I need science packs 1 and 2. If you move down here, you'll need science packs 1, 2, and 3. If you move to here, you'll need 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're going to have to continually improve your factory to automate that research process, and then you're going to have to automate the creation of various things like cars, for example. So here, I'm making steel. Now, the way that I'm making steel is by delivering these iron plates back into furnaces and then turning them into steel. Currently, I'm waiting for my automobilism to finish researching so I can start producing cars. Over here though, we just have some excess copper, and this is where I want to show you how the building mechanics work. If I hold down the right mouse button, I can remove certain items. They're placed back into my inventory. If I want to access my inventory, I press the E key and you can see all the stuff in my inventory over here. So, what do I want to do with this copper? Just to show you how this stuff sort of works. Well, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an inserter here. Now, an inserter will transfer an item from one place to another. I'm going to hit the R key to rotate that. So the line indicates where it starts and the arrow indicates where it's going. As you can see, it's starting to drop off plates there, but there's nowhere for it to go. So what I'm going to do is build an assembly machine. In fact, I already have an assembly machine, but I'm going to build one to show you how it works. So if I go down here and I click assembly machine, it tells me that I need 3 electrical circuits, 5 iron gears, and 9 iron plates. Now, instead of forcing me to create each of those items before I'm allowed to create the assembly machine, if I click the assembly machine and I have the components required, it will do all of that for me in the bottom left-hand corner, as you can see there. Which is a nice feature, saves you a bit of time. Okay, so now I have an assembly machine. Let's stick that in my hotbar. And let's place one down. Okay, so I want the assembly machine to be roughly here, so it can deliver the goods. Yes, there we go. And I need to power it. So as you can see here, it's telling me it doesn't have power. This is a device that requires electricity, so I'm going to put an extra electricity pole there, and that should power the device just fine. Now, I need to click on this device and tell it what I want to make. Now, it can only take in one item and produce one item. And if that item requires more components than just one singular component, it won't do that, and I need higher versions of the assembly machine. In this case, I'm just going to create some copper wire. In fact, I'm going to create some pipes. No, I'm not. I'm going to create some copper wire because I don't have the ingredients. So, now it's creating copper wire. And as you can see, if I press the Alt key, by the way, and I zoom out, the Alt key tabs on and off and shows you what each factory unit is producing, which is kind of helpful. Again, that comes from the tips window in the beginning, and you should probably pay attention to that. So this is now feeding copper into here, but once it's created an item, it's got nowhere to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box here and another inserter to transfer the copper wire from this place into the box. Now I need more power. Now normally I would be very meticulous about how I lay out my power grid, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be lazy. Okay, and now you can see it being transferred into that box. And so we've taken copper, we've converted it into copper wire, and we're storing it in a box. Now I could also turn that into other things like electrical circuits and whatnot. But that's basically how it works, and this is the most complicated system I have over here right now. So that's how the game works, and as you can imagine, things can get pretty crazy. If you look at some of the things you can build in this, you can create like railways, you can create, as I said, flight systems, you can create robotics, batteries, different kinds of turrets, guns, plastics, sulfur, all sorts of stuff, and you can build some really elaborate stuff. There are some videos out there of some pretty insane builds. So if you're the kind of person who likes games, as I said, like SimCity, like Anno, you like that production element, you're going to get a real kick out of this game. Now there's one final thing I need to show you. Over here, you'll see this little nest. Now these are the aliens, and because I'm playing on passive, they are not attacking me. But if you encroach on their territory, they will kill you. A lot. You'll have to build turrets, you'll have to build walls, you'll have to build lots of different kinds of guns with different kinds of ammunition. They will get progressively harder and harder as you move on into the game. So be warned, if you're a first time player, I'd probably play on peaceful to get a hang of things first before you jump into the combat. If I load up the map, you can see down here, this is where I am, that's where they are there. This area of the map down here is full of aliens. Bad idea to go down here if you're not playing on passive mode. I will show you the combat briefly, just to illustrate how it works. Basically, you hover over an item and you press the spacebar and it will fire my gun with my bullets here. When I do that, they're going to attack me. As you can see, I'm now being attacked by multiple aliens. And I'm probably going to die. Please don't die. Okay, there you go. I killed the aliens, right? That's the combat system. It's not particularly evolved, it's not hugely interesting, but it's a nice sense of threat for those of you who want a more exciting gameplay experience. For me, I like relaxed, strategic approaches to these types of games, but for other people, they may want that tower defense element, and it's available, and it's optional, which I really appreciate. As you can see down here, by the way, that's my health bar. So really, that's all the game is. I mean, I shouldn't say that's all the game is, because it's quite complicated and very enjoyable, in my opinion. So what is my conclusion on Factorio? I think, honestly, it's a very, very finished game. In terms of its gameplay depth and the mechanics on offer here, it could ship right now. It needs work in terms of its tutorials, it needs work in terms of its user interface, it needs some polish here and there, and probably some balancing. Other than that though, it kind of feels like a finished game. So if you are interested in this game, it's one of the rare instances where I will recommend you pick it up in early access. However, you're always better off waiting until a product's finished, and this game does plan to ship in 8 to 12 months. So if you want to wait a year, wait a year. But personally, I think if you invest now, you'll get a ton of fun for your money. If this video was helpful or useful to you in some way, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want to support the channel, please like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.